So we're taking the first two stories and we're putting them together, mountaintop and valley flop. We're going to talk about the transfiguration and this demon-possessed boy. And what a lot of times, this is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but only in Mark's account do we have this second story right next to it. And a lot of people have thought, well, they're disconnected, but they're not. I think we have an incredible thing by placing them both together here. What I like about our message this morning, it's perspicuous, which means what? Just easily understood. There's no deep theology in that, but yet the base for it is so foundational and important for each of us. We're going to talk about mountaintop experiences, but also what happens down in the valley and those difficulties, and Jesus being with us in both areas, whichever where. And so really it's going to touch all of us in that way today, because if I ask you, hey, how you doing in the Lord? It might be mountaintop, it might be, yeah, doing great and all that. And it's just like, no, I feel like I'm in a valley. Or you're thinking, no, it's more like Death Valley, right? In the middle of summer. And so wherever you're at, it'll touch you here. So 6 days have passed since Peter tried to keep Christ from going to the cross. What I mean by that is the first time in verse 31 where Jesus is explaining, we have the shift in this gospel of saying, I need to suffer and I'm going to die and I will rise again. And that's where Peter pulls him aside and says, no, you're not. And is trying to, if anything, like keep him from doing that very thing. And so this is the 6 days later since that episode, since that time. And now what we have before us is really the dress rehearsal, Christ's dress rehearsal for his second coming. In all of his splendor, we get to see him in a flash of his glory. And so today in Mark 9, we have these two powerful scenes, transfiguration of Jesus and the healing of a demon-possessed boy. Two opposite extremes. Again, first glance, they seem pretty disconnected, but together they offer this really rich contrast between mountain glory and valley level struggle and how Jesus meets us in both places. Zach Williams and Dolly Parton sing a song called There Was Jesus. And the very thing it starts with is what our message is about. On the mountain, in the valleys, there was Jesus. In the shadow of the alleys, there was Jesus. In the fire and the flood, there was Jesus. Always is and always was. No, I never walk alone. And then Dolly says, never walk alone. You're always there. You're always there. And so we're going to read the first one there in Mark. We took, I believe verse 1 is connected to the end of chapter 8. And so we're taking 2 through 13 in this first part, and we'll break it in half, but I'll leave that behind us there. So Mark chapter 9, verse 2, after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, these three guys, and led them up a high mountain. Since I'm not going to talk about it later, I'm going to say it right here. A lot of people think that it's Mount Tabor, which is about as high as our hills around here. It's about 1,400 feet. And so with that they stress it's a high mountain. There's only one high mountain. It's called Mount Hermon. And it's the very top of Israel, bottom of Lebanon, side of Syria. All three of them kind of connect and touch the mountain a little bit, so they all kind of claim it. But there's skiing, there's snow on the top of it all year round. It's about the elevation of Mammoth, which is in the high 900s. And so that's our mountain. And he was up north in Caesarea Philippi. So it's my guess, just a guess, that would be the high mountain because it specifically uses that language where they're going up on top of that where he gets transfigured. So it says they led them up a high mountain by themselves and he was transfigured before them. And if you're thinking transfigured, what does that mean? Well, he's going to give us a detail here. His clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. That's the best he could do. Like saying it was so white, it was white. It's kind of like if you remember Moby Dick, there's a whole chapter on the whiteness of the whale. It might be a long time since he read that, but it's worth going back and just learning a whole entire chapter on white and color. But anyways, that's what he's trying to do, trying to say it was so dazzling. Verse 4, there appeared to them Elijah with Moses. Just by the way, Elijah's been dead about 900 years. Moses has been dead 1,400 years. And they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it's good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. And then I love this part, verse 6, for he did not know what to say, for they were terrified, right? And so it's just, I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to say something. And that's exactly what he's doing. You've been there. And a cloud, this would be that the Shekinah glory of the Lord, that whenever God's presence is around, a lot of times it talks about this cloud. This is the cloud. And a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud. So this is God the Father speaking. He only does this 3 times in Jesus' ministry out loud for people to hear. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And suddenly looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them, but Jesus only. So Moses and Elijah had vanished. Verse 9. Now as they were coming down the mountain, he charged them to tell no one what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. And so they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead might mean. So they didn't understand his suffering. They didn't understand his death yet. And they didn't understand what he meant by rising from the dead, because you have to be dead to rise from the dead. And you're not going to die because you're the Messiah. That's what they're thinking. And I lost my track. Verse 11, thank you. And they asked him, why did the scribes say that first Elijah must come? Matter of fact, the very end of the Old Testament says that before Messiah comes, you'll see Elijah first. Well, if they just saw Elijah and you came first, Jesus, and we believe you to be Messiah, why? They're just trying to get the timing figured out. And he said to them, Elijah does come first to restore all things. And how is it written of the Son of Man that he should suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as is written of him. So it's really, he kind of puts together 2 things there. Oh, it's going to happen that way. Before my second coming, Elijah will come first. But in a sense, it already has, because of John the Baptist. They did to him what they wanted to, meaning that they killed him. They took him out. And so with that, he's connecting the dots between those 2. And so the 2 things we're going to look at, the first one is a glimpse of glory in that first section there. The Transfiguration reveals Jesus in divine glory. There's a lot of people that have wanted to see the glory of God. Who was one? Starts with an M. Moses, right? I want to see your glory, right? And we'll talk about the difference in the 2. When John was writing his first gospel, or his gospel before he wrote the other 2 letters, and he writes in there in chapter 1 and verse 14, and we beheld his glory. That's going back to this transfiguration moment that they get to see. But the difference with Moses, let me see your glory, and God allows him to see a little bit of his glory, his backside, right? And to be able to do that, what happened? He comes down the mountain, and everybody's looking at him like, look at this guy's sunburn. Like there was something different about him, and it was slowly fading away, but they saw that, and they saw this beam. Now that was a reflection of God's glory upon Moses' face. The difference in the transfiguration, it is sourced within. He is God. He's letting out. It's Superman starting to undo his shirt there and open it up there, where all of a sudden you're seeing, oh, you're not Clark Kent, you're Superman, right? He's all of a sudden unveiling some of his own glory. So this isn't a reflection thing. He is the source. That's the difference there. When the book of Hebrews opens up, it's just a great thing to run back to and just read the first 3 verses. I'm just going to read verse 3, but on who Jesus is. And so I grabbed it from the New Living Translation. It says, the Son radiates God's own glory. So again, kind of talking about this transfiguration and what's happening there. Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God, because he is God, right? And so that's what's happening there. Anyways, great intro. Moses, it's a great intro to Hebrews. I don't say, Brian, that was just a great, awesome intro that you just did. That sounded weird. Moses and Elijah appear. And we think, well, why those 2? Well, what most have come up with is, well, Moses represents the law, since he was the writer. He wrote down the law, the first 5 books of the Bible, and Elijah representing one of the major prophets. And so he represents the law and the prophets that have come down to speak to him about his, Matthew says, his departure, his exodus from this planet. And more of this is going to be difficult, this is going to be hard. When the Father looks away, you're bearing all the sins of the world. This is going to be difficult. The encouragement to go forward, it seems to be what these 2 guys are appearing to do here, because it's coming pretty soon. The voice of God the Father says, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Peter's up there, and when he starts talking in that way, it seems that he's kind of saying, let's forget Jerusalem. Let's build 3 tiki huts right here for you 3. I don't need one. I'll just sleep on a rock right here. But let's stay in this moment and enjoy just this aspect of your glory. I don't blame him for that. He wants to stay up there and wants to be with them. He's putting these tents up because, well, that was the tabernacle, was a tent for the presence of God. And so I think a lot of it was coming from the right standpoint and the right heart, because we read further, he didn't know what to say. And so he just started talking. But what he was probably trying to do was preserve the moment. We've all tried to do that before. Of a great vacation, great anniversary getaway. It's like, how about we take one or 2 more days? How about another week, right? And you want it to last. See, everyone wants to stay and enjoy that mountaintop experience, but you can't live there because reality is in the valley. We'd rather preserve the moment, but God says, no, listen to my son and move on. Listen to what he's saying and move on. Peter, don't interrupt me, because really that's what Peter was doing, was interrupting the Father. Now, he didn't know the Father was going to speak right then, but he didn't know what to say, so I better say something. But it was the Father showing up saying, shh, 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 shh. Now would be a time just to be quiet and listen to what he's saying and move. We have something to do, and it's a very important part to what's happening right here is the second piece or the second story that we're going to connect. I think right now, most of our life, much of our life takes place in the valley of reality. Demonic activity, maybe unanswered prayers, helpless parents, tormented children. That's all going to be in this next story, and frustrated disciples. But all of that is what they find when they get down into the valley, because down in the valley is where faith and reality meet. So, kind of our takeaway in this first section is mountaintop moments are meant to deepen our obedience. That's what they're about. That's what they're for. Not just our awe. They're in awe of seeing the glory of the Lord. Okay, but it's more than that. When your mother used to ask you, "Did you hear me?" she wasn't asking about your hearing ability. She was asking about your obedience. And that's what he's saying. This should be something that would tip us off towards being obedient to just listen to what he has to say. So worship should always lead to obedience. Don't just admire Jesus. He has a lot of admiration around the world. Again, Gandhi really admired Jesus, but we have to move beyond just admiring him and actually listen to him, which means being obedient to him, and just blessed are those who do what I command them to. So, mountaintops aren't meant to be campgrounds. They're to be launching pads. I like that. Good reminder for us. In the last little section there, questions in the afterglow. The disciples they're trying to process what had just happened. How did the Messiah show up before Elijah? And so they're putting that together. We already talked about that. But Jesus starts connecting the dots with Elijah and John the Baptist showing up, being a type of Elijah. But again, a takeaway for our last section here, or second section, even after spiritual highs, confusion can linger. That's okay. And so we have that retreat that we go to, a conference that we just really enjoyed, a few days just to maybe sit with the Lord out in nature all by yourself with him, whatever it is, but we can still come away from that and still have questions. That seems to be normal here. But Jesus walks with us in the questions. He walks with us in the tensions. He's not, another question, Brian, thanks. No, he's with us there. He's drawing us out. And so all of that is fine. And it's beautiful. Let's get our second story, 14 through 29. And when they came to the disciples, so they came down the mountain now, so we had the 3 disciples with Jesus, and they're going to meet up with the other 9. When they came to the other 9, the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, Jesus, were greatly amazed and ran up to him and greeted him. And he asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" So he's trying to find out what's going on here, he asks. And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, Jesus now to the disciples, "O faithless generation." Two questions. How long am I to be with you? He's going to be leaving soon. How long am I to bear with you? And then he looks back to him and says to the Father, "Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. And when the Spirit saw Jesus, when the Spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about. Listen to all the info that it gives us on this so you can get the picture. Foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asks his Father. Now this would be a time where Jesus, just heal him. He needs a healing really badly. But he has one more question. He asked the Father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. It has often cast him in the fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Don't miss the misplaced if. Well, if you can do this, if you can help, if you can heal him. So Jesus ifs him back. It says, if you can believe, basically, is what he's saying. Immediately, the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm the father, if he says, if you believe, he's going to be healed, you know what I'm going to say? I believe. Just heal him. That's where I would have stopped. But this guy is so honest with Jesus, and he says, "I believe." Man, help all the parts where I can't believe. Help my unbelief. When Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." This is a strange case where the demon possession has to do with or affects his being able to hear and speak. And with that, it doesn't mean every time somebody's mute or deaf that it has to do with demon possession. No, not at all. But in this case, it does. But I like that he says, "I command you, come out of him." And then he says, "And never enter him again." I don't know if anybody else heard that, but I guarantee the Father, this has been a long time, and to never enter him again. Oh, those are beautiful words. And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out. And the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He's dead." And look what Jesus does. But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." I wish it gave us a little more definition on this kind. Just a freaky demon? Like, what is this kind of demon? Where these guys already back in chapter 6, he sent out the 12, 2 by 2. They had all done that. They had done miracles. They healed people and they cast out demons. And he endued them with power and sent them out. And they did that. They've experienced it. They touched it. They know what it feels like. They know that they could do that. What was missing here? But he says this kind, and so higher level or lower level demon that they're dealing with, that's what it seems. Just doesn't give us more detail than that. And so in our little 3 sections here, our first one with the chaos and crisis below, the valley below is messy. Think what they're coming from. They saw Jesus in his glory. Like, what's better than that? And you can just picture Peter, let's just camp out here. Right? And let's just sit in this, right? And we don't blame them for doing that. But coming down into the valley below is messy. There's arguing. There's pain. There's powerlessness. We have a distressed father over here, and we have a struggling child over here. That's what they step into in the valley. The contrast is jarring and, I believe, intentional of putting these two stories together right here. And Jesus is Lord in both places. That's what we got to walk away with this morning. So don't forget that. I'll keep saying it a few more times. Jesus is Lord in both places. And so he had left the 9 alone for a little bit, and they were disputing with the scribes and asked what they're talking about. And this man steps forward and says, "They're debating over my son." The debate's going on. Some debates are hard because they start getting, very emotional and you're intense and everything else. And maybe it's gone on so long they forgot what they're debating about. But anyways, the father knows they're debating over. It's all about my child. That's what stirred all of this up. So forget everything that they're talking about. Here's the problem. It's my son. I brought him to you to be healed. That's what this is about. This dad is hurting in a bad way. And the disciples can't fix it. They tried. It's not that they just got arguing and didn't try. No, they tried and failed to cast out the demon. Real ministry isn't on the mountain. Real ministry is the mess down in the valley when people are broken. And that's where Jesus is needed most. The next section of faith struggles, Jesus asked this man's father, how long has it been happening to him? Now let me pause and say, Jesus, what does that matter right now? Do you need to really know that? I bet you already know it anyways. Why are you asking that question? Let's get along with that. Look what's happening to this poor kid. It's bad enough he's demon possessed, but what the demon is doing to him right now, foaming of the mouth, rolling around, come on, just heal him. And so we have to ask the question, why is he asking him this right now? Why are you asking how long has this happened to him? What's he doing here? And I would say, I believe what he's doing here. He's drawing the father out. He's doing this for the father, probably for the crowd to be able to hear and see what's going on, but he's drawing him out. He's allowing him to unburden himself. This is what I would call long-term trauma care in its finest. This guy has been doing 24/7 care for him. How long? Ever since he was a small boy, throwing him into the fire, throwing him into the water, trying to drown him, trying to kill him, nighttime, daytime, all of this. And he's just like, blah. He's just laying it like a good therapist would sit there and listen to you and ask you and draw you out some questions. That's what he's doing right here. And he's allowing him just to take it all off of his shoulders and saying, this life has been hard with this boy. And look what he's gone through and look what he's going through. We would have missed all of that. And hearing the background and the detail and all of that. I like when it comes to counseling, I call it a counseling scripture. I don't know if it's intended that way in the beginning. But in Proverbs 20 and verse 5, it says, the purpose in a man's heart is like deep water. So there's something, you think of a deep well. And it says, but a man of understanding will draw it out. That's what I believe. Jesus is the man of understanding. And he's taking the bucket to the bottom of the well here and just pulling it all out. And he's just going, blah. This is how hard it's been. The father brings fragile faith to Jesus. Just believe. If you can believe. And so he brings his fragile faith to Jesus. His conflicted faith really becomes the turning point. This is why it's being kind of broadened out a little bit. He's working faith in dad's life. And he's going to let this faith mature and it's going to grow and everything else. That's part of the scene and what's happening. And he's seeing that his faith is fragile and he wants to help him with that. It's not perfect faith, but it's honest faith. You and I need to learn from this. It's not flawless faith, but it's honest dependence upon God. See, the mighty hand of God is not dependent on the mighty faith of man. See, this would have been the best place. If it's true in a lot of Christianity today, that if somebody doesn't get healed, that the healer looks to the person that needs healed and says, if your faith was only better. This would be a perfect time for Jesus to be able to say that. If you only had a little bit more faith, I can't do anything, sorry, walk away. You disciples didn't do anything wrong. It's his problem. No way, he doesn't do that. The mighty hand of God is not dependent on the mighty faith of man. Again, it's not faith on our faith on him and the bigness of our God. So the levels of our faith, own it. It's not constant. It waxes and wanes, it increases, it diminishes if you're anything like me. We move from faith to faith. It doesn't matter how strong your faith is. Sometimes it can be at the top and just get assaulted by the enemy. You get your faith to just be pumping and doing incredible, and your devotions and everything else, and your relation with the Lord, and you could be at the top of your game, and that a demon come along and just smack it out of you. That's life. And when your faith is hanging on by a fingernail, when it's hanging on by a thread, You cry out this prayer, just like this man did. Of course I believe, Lord. I believe in you. But help all the parts of unbelief that are there too, and I haven't figured out and I don't understand. See, let me tell you this morning, I know mixed in my belief is unbelief every day. My belief is not perfect. My belief is not pure. My belief may be weak. And daily I have to say, I need your help on the parts that I'm weak in. Right? Sounds like Christianity. So when you're assaulted with doubts, tie yourself to the mast. Our takeaway, Jesus meets us where we're weak. Not necessarily when we have it all together. Oh, he meet us there too. But he loves meeting us when we're weak, broken. When your faith is flawed and frazzled and fragile, just ask him, can you help me with this too? Calvary Murrieta, bring your not enough faith to him. That's what it's teaching us. If you don't grab anything else this morning, grab that right there. Grab that prayer, this honest man's prayer right there. And quit trying to fake it till you make it. Quit trying to like make it like you're more spiritual or you got like loads of faith and it's just like, I'll grab just more out of my backpack here. Yeah, how much faith you want to see? No. When I am weak, Paul says, then I'm strong. Because I've walked myself through in my weakness. He's strong. I'll ask for his strength. That's what makes me strong. It's it, walking through that whole thing. See, this is the heart of the valley when belief and doubt coexist. And all you can offer Jesus is your honesty. And you know what? That's enough. That's what we learn. That's enough. And Jesus moves towards broken faith with compassion and power. He draws near to those with a broken and contrite heart. That's his promise to us. Last section, power through prayer, not performance, power through prayer. I like as they're all going, I think he's dead. It's like, good try, Jesus, but he's dead now. And Jesus reaches down and grabs him by the hand and lifts him up. He says, arise. So beautiful. Help my unbelief. How's your unbelief now, Dad? He's got to be pumping with belief, what he just saw, what he just witnessed, what Jesus just did for him. These disciples are trying to figure out, as soon as they get in the house, behind closed doors, okay, how do we mess up? what are we missing here, right? And want to know, teach us, Rabbi, what happened? The disciples had knowledge, but they lacked connection, or I would say intimacy. Because they've done it, if they lacked prayer, then they weren't praying. And they were thinking, oh, demon possession, we've dealt with this. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing, but basically relying on their own power, that's something we've done before. Maybe let's just do it the same way, say the same words, whatever. We saw it happen before, but they forgot to pray. That they don't understand this type, demonic possession. You think you and your flesh is stronger than that? They tried to operate in power without dependence. Through the disciplines of prayer and fasting, I meant to mention that when we read that. In the ESV, it just says prayer. In some other translations, like the New King James, it says prayer and fasting. There's a debate. It's not in all the different documents, and so they try to figure it out. Usually, they'll go with the lesser of them because this piece could have been added. But we know it's. I'm going to put them both together here and say both prayer and fasting, those are disciplines of the Christian faith. And we know they're both good and right. And so with it, I'll put them together here. Through the disciplines of prayer and fasting, my life is more faith-filled rather than fear-filled. And we need that. See, Jesus reminds them prayer isn't an accessory, it's essential. Hey, did I tell you we have prayer today at 1:30 to 2:30 in the Agape room for our church if you'd like to join me today? Okay, there's my infomercial. He reminds them prayer isn't an accessory, it's an essential to the Christian walk. Prayer is the pipeline of power, not the performance, not the technique, not the hype. It's the pipeline of power. So in the valley, prayer is not the last resort. It's supposed to be the first response. In the valley, what you need most isn't strength, but it's more connection to the source. As we wrap up our time and move into communion, don't get stuck on mountaintop highs. They're beautiful. They're incredible when the Lord brings them our way. Or don't get stuck avoiding the mess in the valley. Jesus with you in both. As we said, he invites your worship on the mountain and your weakness in the valley. Wherever you are, bring your heart, whether it's full of awe up on the top or full of unbelief. Let Jesus meet you there. Also remember, mountaintop experiences are great, but you know that no fruit grows up there? Fruit only grows in the valley. Now, we're not talking hilltops, but I'm talking mountaintops, 9,000-foot elevation. You don't see apple orchards. You don't see somebody growing gardens and vegetables and things like that up there. That's not where the fruit is. The fruit in our lives, that spiritual fruit that he wants to see in our lives, it grows down in the valley. I'll wrap up with this: the dead battery and the jumper cables. You take your truck up in the mountains for a weekend getaway. View is incredible. Air is crisp, and for a moment, life feels right. It's a mountaintop moment. No stress, no noise, just you in creation. But Monday hits and you're back in the valley, back to the real life. And as you go to start your truck, you realize the battery's dead. You have a full tank of gas, you have 4 good tires, you have the right gear, but none of it matters without a connection to the power source. And that's what happened here. They have experience. They've seen miracles. They've done miracles. But when the crisis came, the boy's father brought his son to them, and nothing happened. Jesus didn't say they needed more training or you guys need more knowledge. He didn't go into a list of things that they needed more of. He said they simply needed prayer, the connection to the power source. That's what was missing. That's what they missed completely. I'm going to invite up our worship team. Let me pray and we'll move into that. Jesus, we're here because we believe, even though that belief feels small, maybe today. Lord, we would ask for you to just take our faith right where it's at, and we would say, God, would you grow it? Would you anchor it? And would you strengthen it today? In Jesus' name, amen. This morning, I invite you to come to the communion table, not because you're strong, but because you're weak. Not because your faith is flawless, but because your Savior is faithful. Communion is for people like Peter, who wanted to stay on the mountaintop, and it's also for people like the hurting father down in the valley, where he says, wherever you're at, he calls to his sons and daughters and says, come to the table.